Discussion between local and federal agencies. Today, the Lyon County Sheriff's Office and other agencies met with the U.S. Forest Service today to discuss policing of land between the lakes. Last night, we reported starting October 24th, the Lyon County Sheriff's Office will only respond to emergency calls in LBL if they're asked to provide backup by the U.S. Forest Service. Local 6's Temi Adelea joins us now. So, Temi, what did they discuss at this meeting?
Todd, they talked about how policing of LBL would look in the future, among other things. We were told the U.S. Forest Service did not want us sitting in on the conversation, so we waited to speak after the meeting. They directed us to their public relations officer, who was not there. Professional with a few hiccups. That's how the tone of this meeting was described. Lyon County Sheriff Brent White says prior conversations with the U.S. Forest Services haven't gone well, so this needed to happen.
I don't believe any of us that previously had met were happy with the way those conference calls ended, and so we suggested any future discussions only be done if we were able to do those face-to-face. And so the Forest Service accommodated us with that request, and that's why we met today.
Last night, we reported that in a 2019 letter from the Forest Service to local government agencies, that Forest Services said there would be 6 officers serving LBL. Currently, there are only 3. After the meeting, we tried to...
Let's back this up a little bit.
That Forest Services said there would be 6 officers serving LBL.
Let's stop right there. I think those who are familiar with my story in regards towards the people that have tried to destroy my life right here by the name of LBL. All those occurrences took place in my life between 20 and 17. Year 20 and 17 up until 20 and 14. So this particular contract right here is basically about 3 years into what that they had done to me in regards towards 2 telephone calls that was non-threatening that they went all the way to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma to gather me up. I've got it word for word of their own documentation, of their own translation. There was no threats, but yet and all, they cornered me up after dragging me 500 miles and me losing my job, my truck, my trailer, my $50,000 worth of tools, and a 3-bedroom apartment, or a 3-bedroom house, rather, that I just rented out. I had lost all that over 2 telephone calls because of these people right here, land between the lakes. Now, what they done, they shuttled that around. And they got Lisa Hawkins and Gary Hawkins, which worked for Land Between the Lakes, to actually fill out the warrant. But by filling out the warrant in Trigg County, because that's where the warrant come from, it come from Trigg County, it shouldn't have been mandated under a federal statute. They went ahead and mandated it under a federal statute of stalking in the first degree, which covers, according to their books, 1 to 5 per call, per account. Even though both telephone calls was innocently done, and I told them that my story was going to get told. Went all the way out to Oklahoma. God only knows what that costed. I'm going to say a few $1,000s for 2 drivers to drive all the way out there and then bring me back to Kentucky. Then the state government, Judge Woodall, working for the state of Kentucky in Trigg County, in Cadiz, Kentucky, ordered for me to be put on a drug called Risperdal that I did not want to get on, that basically after he got through signing the paperwork, they told me at the medical examiner's office, or where I was being evaluated at up in LaGrange, Kentucky, they told me that if I didn't voluntarily take it, that they was going to tie me to a bed and force it into my system, either through the erectical or in other, like set up an IV or force it down my mouth or whatever. These are the same people that tried. Now, they're going to lie to you and tell you that they didn't have nothing to do with this. But I think everybody and their brother knows that they did, pertaining to what went on in 2017 up in that area, whenever that I was trying to help those people by telling them about electrical disturbances to come, in which a year and a half later it did, pertaining to a major ice storm. But these people literally tried to destroy my life. They tried the first time through Four Rivers Behavior Center after I got arrested by the Paducah authorities there in Paducah, Kentucky, whenever they shut down the Kentucky Dam, trying to make it out like that I was going to create electrical disturbances by, I guess, blowing the dam. I don't know. I still ain't understood that one. But they shut down the road, put it on WPSD News, that there was a potential threat, and that's the reason why they had to stop all the traffic to go in there and look for bombs. I still believe that they was using me as a pawn in a game to be able to get their state Congress to verify, give them approval of starting about a $400 million bridge. I guess it would be just west or northwest of the original dam, and diverting the traffic in a different direction. That way they could basically have them a spillway to where everybody could go fishing and walking and enjoy walking the dog and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the dam is still open towards regular traffic coming to the dam pertaining to people fishing in the dam, but as far as it being an open public highway, they shut that down after they got the bridge done. And that's exactly what they wanted to do the whole time. They was just using me as a pawn. Well, that didn't work towards having me institutionalized. I'll be darned, in 2009, I was back up in the area. They nabbed me up again, land between the lakes. Took me to a federal judge in a federal trial and was going to charge me for wanting to rid the axis of evil from society. Wanting to charge me now because I wanted to see rapes end. I wanted to see murders come to an end. I wanted to see theftery come to an end. I wanted to see being disobedient to parents come to an end. I wanted to see all the corruption come to an end. They basically arrested me and wanted me to go through another federal evaluation rather than it being a county evaluation, towards taking me to MCC in downtown Chicago took 6 months out of my life just over that evaluation. Well, that wasn't good enough. 2 years after the date of whenever I finally got out of all that and my probation had ended, I wasn't no longer on any type of restrictions pertaining to any type of mandated by any type of judge. I made 2 telephone calls, one to the LBL administration and the other one to Mr. Hawkins. And like I said, they crawfished from land between the lakes themselves, did not fill out the paperwork. What they done at this particular point in time was use one of their pawns, which was Gary Hawkins. And of course, Lisa Hawkins was the dispatcher up there working for law enforcement at the time. They used those 2 individuals towards taking their anxiety and their unprofessionalism out on me by signing an affidavit of 2 accounts for stalking in the first degree over 2 telephone calls. 2 telephone calls. Keep in mind that all the other telephone calls, other than maybe one, within a period of 3 or 4 years, had been going directly to the Land Between the Lakes Law Enforcement Agency office on their government phone. Keep in mind, because I stayed up there for so long, Gary Hawkins, that worked for the Forestry Department, gave me his cell phone in case of something that occurred, in which it did, towards them basically having to come up there and make sure that I was all right after a hurricane or a pre-hurricane come out of Texas and come up through, this was in 2012, come up through Land Between the Lakes and done a great deal of damage to the Forestry Department during the time that I was up there camping. So yes, I did have Gary Hawkins' telephone number, but no, I did not call Mr. Hawkins. I did not aggravate Mr. Hawkins. All the other telephone calls I knew was being documented verbatim after they interpreted what that I had said and then wrote it down or typed it down on a piece of paper, because the very same thing was being recorded. And I knew that the conversations was being recorded. That was the whole purpose for me leaving them on the company phone, the federal company phone, versus calling Mr. Hawkins. I'd only contacted Mr. Hawkins that I know of one other time in a span of a 4-year period. One time, and one time only. And as far as I was concerned, it was a casual, normal telephone call. Wasn't nobody arguing, wasn't nobody getting loud, wasn't nobody doing nothing. But because I made 2 telephone calls, they got Lisa Hawkins and Gary Hawkins to fill out a civil action, law-breaking, criminal warrant for my arrest, and they went all the way out to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, to try to finish me off. And they come close. They really did. After they took me now through a state evaluation. I went from a county evaluation to an MCC federal evaluation, and now I'm going through a LaGrange, Kentucky state evaluation. 3 evaluations coming from the same group of people. And of course, that's whenever the doctor there in LaGrange ordered for me to be put on Risperdal, and that's whenever I suddenly started gaining massive amount of weight pertaining to obesity, in which that is the pattern of the characteristics of what that drug does. It causes obesity. So, by me saying all that, I say this pertaining to the Forestry Service, the Federal Forestry Service, there in Land Between the Lakes in Western Kentucky. Do I wish for any harm or any violence or any type of maliciousness coming to those people's lives? No, not at all. Because that would be a violation of my Christianity towards what I believe, towards praying for my enemies and do good to those who persecute me and who bring up false accusations against me. So I got to stay within the guidelines of the pretense of the spiritual laws before I go out of the way towards man-made laws. And that's one reason why that I hadn't gotten an attorney and went in and sued them, is because I know that in a sense, just like the Amish and the Mennonites and some of the other Christian groups out there, even if you come into our home and kill one of our people, or you rob us or whatever, I mean, if the state wants to pick those charges up and convict those people that done that, that'd be fine. But as far as the Mennonites or the Amish ever bringing charges against anybody pertaining to any type of crime, odds are they're not going to do it, from what I know about them. And because of their religious stance that they have with the glory of God. Because They fully commit to God, and God says that vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, and we as Christians are supposed to be wise as serpents but harmless as doves. But I say all that to say this: whatever befallens upon this agency in Land Between the Lakes, whatever happens to these people, it couldn't have happened to a better group of people. And the reason being is because of bad karma, that now all this aggravation that they have enstewed up into other people's lives, not just mine's probably one of the worst, but then again, who knows, they liable to wind up killing somebody in the woods and no one would have never known the difference. I mean, you got people that literally live in Land Between the Lakes because they don't have nowhere to live, but they got to abide by the rules and regulations towards can't stay camp for no longer than 21 days, and you got to move, and you got to stay gone for a mile, and you got to stay gone for at least, I think it's 72 hours or maybe a week, and then you can come back and reset up camp again and go another 21 days. That's primitive camping. And I think in total it used to be $30 a year. It may be $40 a year now, I don't know, for primitive camping. And you got all kinds of people that live in cars. You got all kinds of people that live in campers. You got all kinds of people that's hiking, biking. You got people that's riding motorcycles, four-wheelers, dune buggies. You got all kind of boating, all kinds of fishing, because you got lakes on both sides of it. I mean, it ought to be a money-making thing through their professional camping agencies, regardless whether it's Hillman Ferry or Wrangler's Campground. It basically contends to a bunch of cowboys pertaining to the horses and stuff. And there's 2 or 3 other major campgrounds that I know that they charge money on. I mean, some of them are based on an honor system, but they still charge money for you to camp at certain campsite areas. So it ought to be a money-making, profitable thing. They have supposedly over 3 million people a year that come and visit LBL. And I'm sure all of them's intentions are not the same. Some wants to watch birds. Someone wants to hear owls. Someone thinks that they can capture maybe a picture of a wolf, or some of them's in there fishing or hiking or whatever. It's strictly a recreation area. And for these people to have attacked an innocent person such as myself, you're darn right. I'm going to tell the whole world about what has happened pertaining to how that they have tried to destroy my life. And it wouldn't have been no different if they'd loaded up a gun and shot it at me. If I'd have got injured pertaining to a bullet that glanced me, but I'm still living. The things that they have done is on that same pretense towards them trying to destroy my life or basically kill me. Land Between the Lakes. Got paperwork. Authentically, I can prove it. But whenever I put messages out there to the general public, I don't get no recourse. I don't get no confirmation from any type of a judge or any type of an attorney. So it's obvious that people in this area that does get a hold of my messages, that does know anything about my life pertaining to LBL, it's obvious that they don't care what has happened to an individual, because I'm sure it's all based around money. And if I don't have like $10,000 to put on the table so that they can go after these people, well, they're not going to volunteer their services towards coming to me. And they probably figure, well, by now, the statute of limitations is done run out. Oh, really? After you almost got through killing somebody? Attempted murder charges should be filed upon to these people. This whole agency pertaining to Dwayne Camry, badge number 1414, Gary Hawkins and his wife Lisa Hawkins, and various people that worked for this agency that knew and knowed about what was going on. All their deputies at the time knew what was going on, in addition to their other park rangers that knew what was going on. There was a ministry at the time that knew what was going on, that was based out of Southern Illinois, that I can prove. I still got the paperwork on. these people should be charged for attempted murder for what that they have done. But instead, all I can do is make references pertaining to what that they have done, and hopefully one day there'll be somebody out there that will care enough about what has occurred that maybe they'll try to help me in settling this out some way or another. But in the meantime, let's listen to the rest of this. And like I said, I don't wish any type of harm or hurt upon any of the individuals that either are working for LBL or have worked for LBL or future tense may possibly end up working for LBL. I wish absolutely no harm, no malice play upon the judge or any of the individuals that tried to destroy my life by trying to use character assassination like I was some sort of a terrorist. Of course, the same thing happened right up here in Martin, Tennessee, just because I used the word explosion in some of my wording. Whenever it comes to lawsuits, if the truth be known, I could go after Weakley County, I could go after Martin, I could go after Kenton, I could go after the federal department in the state of Kentucky, I could go after the State Department, I could go after Judge Woodall, I could go after Land Between the Lakes, and I could go after Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, because all these people have addressed the same patterns towards trying to destroy my life. All of them. And to this day, cannot get no confirmation. A matter of fact, I made mention either last year or the year before, sometimes I get my years mixed up because of COVID, that they was having the 25th anniversary. I made mention that I wanted to go out there during the 25th anniversary, which was in April. And out of a courtesy call, I contacted the park rangers there in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, hoping that the time elapse would have redeemed me towards me being able to go back to the park there in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And they were so agitated about me even asking, they contacted the sheriff's department here in Weakley County and had a deputy come out here at my house to tell me that if I so much as stepped foot in the state of Oklahoma, I would liable to wind up getting arrested. I actually, if you look in some of my content pertaining to the recordings that I made at that time, I documented the police officer that come out here that made that type of statement. It would take me a while to hunt through my library to be able to find it, but I could find it, I guarantee you. But let's listen to the rest of the situation, what's going on up in this particular area pertaining to these people that obviously has hexed themselves in ways that it's unimaginable towards what that they have said and done up in that area towards violating other people's rights and other people's lives. Let's listen.
Currently, there are only 3. After the meeting, we tried to speak with someone from the U.S. Forest Service, but we were told to email our questions to Public Relations Officer Scott Raymond, who was not there. So I asked him, and he said, quote, Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area, LBL, is currently in the process of hiring the additional positions on our law enforcement staff. We hope to have these officers on duty in the first quarter of 2022. Numbers of officers dropped recently due to a retirement and the promotion of 2 other officers.
I believe that's ambitious. They told us back in August 2019 that they were going to do that exact same thing. Over 2 years later, that still hasn't come to fruition. We're cautiously optimistic that they'll fast track that this time, but it remains to be seen, and I'm not going to hold my breath.
White said in the meeting, the U.S. Forest Service also presented a memorandum of understanding to all local agencies to sign.
We declined to do that. Specifically, I declined to do that because that is a blank check from the citizens of Lyon County that will provide services free of charge and share resources free of charge with the U.S. Forest Service. And I just could not commit to that at this time. A lot of this land was taken from many of our citizens. And again, it's something that I don't feel is in the best interest. Plan was taken, and I just could not commit to that at this time. A lot of this land was taken from many of our citizens. Could not commit to that at this time. A lot of this land was taken from many of our citizens.
Did you hear what he said? A lot of that land was taken from our citizens in Linn County. And now the administration in Land Between the Lakes can't obviously pull their own load towards maintaining proper financing for law enforcement. And now they're reaching out to various counties that wants them to basically bend over backwards for land between the lakes. And just like that officer just got through saying, let's listen to it one more time.
It's something that I and share resources free of charge with the U.S. Forest Service. And I just could not commit to that at this time. A lot of this land was taken from many of our citizens.
A lot of that land, or this land that he was talking about this particular subject, which is that particular subject, was taken, stolen. And to this day, it's still up in arms towards people having meetings and talking about how that various people went in and stole property from their grandfathers and their grandmothers and their great-grandfathers, that those people that still living are not going to forget what happened pertaining to how that they went in and bamboozled, stolen, God only knows how many thousands and thousands of acres of ground, all in the name of TVA, Tennessee Valley Association. Especially whenever Kennedy flew over the property and declared it an agriculture, U.S. Department of Agriculture, basically turning it into a national recreation area. From then on, there has been so much animosity up into that area. And that's what I walked off into. That's exactly what I walked off into. I knew there was problems up into that area. That's the reason why the Lord led me up into that area towards developing a sacred site, a praying site that I use for an altar inland between the lakes. That's the reason why that God led me into that area, was because so many people have been burnt, hurt, or used on account of this, and to this day they're still having problems crossing all their T's and dotting all their I's. Crossing all their T's and dotting all their I's. And I'm sure if you was to do some sort of a survey within a 7 or 8 county area around there of people that still living, you probably half of them that was either affected directly or indirectly because of their parents or because of their parents, they would tell you, they probably wouldn't tell you this on camera because they'd be afraid of ridiculation. But they would tell you in private that, yeah, we was beat, we was burnt, we was hurt, we was taken advantage of, we had property that was stolen. And for a government agency that has played a part in not just a few dozen people's lives, not just a few hundred people's lives, but a few thousand people's lives, for an agency to have done this to their own citizenship speaks volumes about the state of Kentucky, and why the governor of the state of Kentucky or somebody that works for Frankfurt don't step in and do a thorough investigation towards the history of all this, including my own personal animosity that I have towards what went on in the past. Once more, speaks volumes about the Commonwealth state of Kentucky, doesn't it? Speaks volumes. See, in the state of Kentucky, you can't get a bail bondsman. You can make bail providing that you're a citizen of Kentucky, or if you can come out with the cash flow towards making the bond. But if you can't come up with the cash flow, and if you're not a citizen of Kentucky towards having property in Kentucky, you're basically nabbed up, and you'll be there until the judge tells you to go home. So because of that, and that alone is an unjust, unfair judicial system that pins people up to the point that they can't fight their case outside towards being incarcerated. You have a whole lot better chance in fighting a case outside whenever you can hire attorneys and get various testimonies and stuff like that. You have a whole lot better chance in winning your case if you can bond out, if you can get out. But they wasn't no way that I was going to bond out on $25,000 bond. I did bound out on a $2,500 bond because I'd done already caught wind that they was fixing to raise my bond towards ordering for some sort of psychiatric evaluation to be done. And sure enough, they done just exactly that. They raised my bond. Judge Woodall in Cadiz, Kentucky, Christian County, raised my bond and then ordered for me to go to another psychiatric evaluation in LaGrange, Kentucky, pertaining to their state hospitals. And for any state agency or federal agency or county agency that does its citizens this way, no wonder they're having all this bad luck. No wonder they've had bridges to fall in. No wonder they've had major ice storms. No wonder they've had all these people that's resigned or retired or went into other places. They're running things like a backwoods, hillbilly-ish type backsetting, I don't know what you'd call it, but yeah. And there's so many of them that goes under the same pretenses because they got a little bit of money. The poor man up in Kentucky, or the working man up in Kentucky, don't have a snowball chance in hell. If you ever lock horns with any of these people in some form or fashion, you don't have a snowball chance in hell in getting over or winning your case. They will dog you down. They will railroad you. They will blackball you. They will hire their own personal agencies to go all the way to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, over 2 non-threatening telephone calls that was not in violation of a court order. That's what you can expect in LBL. I've heard of people throwing down paper that should have got just a regular $35 or $45 or maybe a $60 fine for littering, had to pay as much as $200 or $300 for a littering charge. I've heard of people that cut part of a tree or stuck a nail in a tree, $250 to $500. I've heard of people cutting down a flower, a daisy, a buttercup, and getting charged as much as $500 because you wasn't supposed to cut a buttercup. A wild buttercup now that they probably got millions upon millions of them growing in LBL. They're going to attack somebody and charge them $500. I've heard of other people that has had crosswords with them, not just lately, but people in earlier years, back 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago, before the agency really got a good footing, because it wasn't until 2000 is whenever TVA let go of that property towards actually letting the forestry department take charge. But up until that time, there was problems with TVA. There was problems with their officers towards dogging people out and charging them and being rough on them and doing things. Yes, we're talking about a group of people, son, that thinks that they are above the law and that they can do whatever that they want to do. So whenever I make statements like I make, that it couldn't have happened to a better group of people pertaining to all this bad luck that's happening to this particular agency that works for the agriculture department of a national forest, whenever I say what I'm saying, I kind of mean it in a figurative type way, a metaphorically type way, but in another way, I kind of mean it to be serious about these people for what that they have done to their citizens. Not just me. Knock me completely out of the equation right now. Just their own personal Kentucky citizens, the way that they've railroaded them, it couldn't have happened to a better group of people. I could go to Dover, I can go to Aurora, I can go to Benton, I can go to the other side of the river up towards wherever, even in behind the Army base, Fort Campbell, and I can get testimony after testimony after testimony towards people that's had a hardship pertaining to all this. Let's back it up one more time, and I want to listen to it one more time.
For hiring the additional positions on our law enforcement staff. We hope to have these officers on duty in the first quarter of 2022. Numbers of officers dropped recently due to a retirement and the promotion of 2 other officers.
I believe that's ambitious. They told us back in August 2019 that they were going to do that exact same thing. Over 2 years later, that still hasn't come to fruition. We're cautiously optimistic that they'll fast track that this time, but it remains to be seen, and I'm not going to hold my breath.
White said in the meeting, the U.S. Forest Service also presented a memorandum of understanding to all local agencies to sign.
We declined to do that. Specifically, I declined to do that because that is a blank check from the citizens of Lyon County that will provide services free of charge and share resources free of charge with the U.S. Forest Service. And I just could not commit to that at this time. A lot of this land was taken from many of our citizens. And again, it's something that I don't feel is in the best interest of Lyon Countyans.
I asked Raymond more questions about officers and land between the lakes. We'll have those questions and his answers in this story. Just search for it on WPSDLocal6.com. Todd?
Tammy, thanks. White says they will continue to have conversations with local law agencies and the U.S. Forest Service with hopes they come to an agreement soon. Yeah.
I went as far as in 2009, whenever the major ice storm hit up into that area, towards going up there, quitting my job for an individual that had a body shop there in front of Gate 1 called Bumpus Body Shop. I put all my tools up, rented out a storage area. It was below zero temperatures. Everybody was out of electricity. The governor finally declared a state of an emergency. Finally, on about 80 counties that was shut down. And I went up there to help in Livingston County, which is in Grand Rivers, Kentucky. I was working for the fire department, doing volunteer humanitarian work for approximately 3.5 to 4 days until whenever they found out who I was and not requested, but ordered for me to leave their town. And if I didn't, I was going to be arrested. Well, I left their town and went to the opposite side of the county, over towards the Ohio River, stayed all night with an individual in a church. Like I said, no electricity. The next day, I helped him cut up a tree and hook up 2 or 3 generators and gas them up. And all of a sudden, here comes the Livingston County Sheriff's Department that basically live on the other side. At that time, the sheriff that lived over towards, I don't forget the name of it, but it was in Livingston County, in that same area. 2 deputies come over there. They found out who I was. Once more, people's on drugs. Here they are without electricity. They need all the free help that they can get. I'm not charging them a penny. And all of a sudden, here comes these 2 officers that tells me that I'm going to leave Livingston County, and if I come back, I would be arrested. And they escorted me from that county over into the county that Paducah, Kentucky is in, which I think is Marshall County. I may be wrong about that. I'm not that familiar with their counties up there. But the bottom line is this. You talk about biting the hand that was trying to feed them as far as my free services, humanitarian work. Calvert City, everything from Grand Rivers, Benton, Kentucky, Calvert City, going up towards Paducah, Kentucky, what occurred to those people's lives in 2009 whenever that ice storm hit, I really feel sorry for them. I really do. But the fact of the matter is, I was trying to help them because God had showed me that there was going to be this type of an event that was soon to hit. A matter of fact, that year, it got so hot that part of East Tennessee caught a fire with major fires over towards Dollywood and Pigeon Forge. And the lake of, I forgot the name of the lake, over there pretty close to Atlanta, Georgia, almost dried up to the point that the governor requested for people to pray for rain. People to pray for rain. That was in 2007. So, bad karma does come around. Whenever it talks about the Bible that vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I guarantee you, all this stuff that has been created pertaining to the bad luck of Land Between the Lakes is all part of bad karma that they have created for themselves. And like I said, the governor, your state officials up into that area, some of your representatives in that area, if they really thought much about their citizens, they would have already stepped in. I commend the officer. I don't know if he was the sheriff or just a deputy. He may have been the sheriff. I commend for him to saying what he said about his citizens in Lyon County. Because their feelings had already been hurting about the past towards what had happened pertaining to the property being taken from them. I commend him towards not wanting to go on some sort of volunteer mission of bending over backwards for LBL, whenever LBL are the very ones that established this establishment illegally by taking it from people, and now they ain't got the ability to keep the doors open. They can't hire deputies and keep them on staff towards being able to run various calls and be able to work those areas way out in the woods and way out in the boondocks. It's sad. It's really sad that people are that ignorant, that they have made a mistake with their citizens, but yet no, they're not willing to do anything towards trying to make amends. And that's in addition to what they've done to me. That's their own citizens. That's their own citizens that they've done that to. Good luck to all of us as we end our program. Thanks again for listening. Shalom.